Good morning. It is the 8th of November, 2022. Again, I'm in Refugee. I'll probably be here for some months, quite a few months, before I'm able to move to Minsk. But it's Election Tuesday right now in the United States. Of course, that election won't be happening for quite some time. It's about 9:30 or, I don't know, maybe it's even 10 o'clock in the morning. You know, I can't even hardly keep the day straight, let alone what hour it is. But it's in the morning, and it's not that early, even though it might look kind of early because you know, we're a little bit farther north here than probably a lot of people that are going to be watching this video. It's more like maybe on the same latitude as Canada or something, not the United States. But besides that, I mostly want to talk about Poland and this possible refugee crisis as well, of what's coming up in the near future, because a lot of people are talking about when the weather gets cold and the economic situation, and that there's possibly or probably going to be a lot of refugees leaving Ukraine, and where are they going to go? And some people, I think it was on the Duran, I think it was Alexander Mercouris, who actually has very good analysis on things, on what's really going to happen. But he was mentioning that there will be some coming to Belarus, but I don't know if there's going to be that much. Very, very little, because I don't know how they're going to get in. If they're going to be going by foot or whatever. I think the border is blocked, and in the wild areas there's mines laid. Poland left mines all over, believing maybe that they might get invaded by Russia. I don't know if Russia actually ever moved troops, even at the beginning of this conflict, into Ukraine from Belarus. I don't think they did, because Lukashenko has this policy that there will be no wars launched from Belarus. And Lukashenko is normally, he's very strict when it comes to following his own rules. Of course, it's not like the United States, which makes up a rule and breaks it whenever it suits their purpose, especially when it has to do with other people. You can't make any arrangements or any agreements with the United States, because nothing is ever honored. I guess a country without honor. This is a school here. I'll show it to you. It's nearby where I live, and I'm going to turn around. But this school, I believe it's from the earliest years up through like junior high. I believe it's not like in the United States where you have elementary school, junior high, high school. So it's you stay a longer period of time in one school, and I think you do have a choice. Like this school, for example, maybe it specializes in certain languages, like for the people like German or something. But if you want to have your child learn English better than German, then you can go to another school, and also in the nearby areas. And like people living here, they might live right next door, but none of their children go to school there. They might go to this one that's further down the road, and then there's another school that's further down the other way, depending on maybe what the desires or needs of the child are. So it's not like you're forced into going to some particular school. In that way, it's actually better than the United States, because normally, I remember when I was growing up, I had to go to a particular high school, for example. Even though I lived closer to another high school, it wasn't in my district. So it's also true. A friend of mine, he lived that was a time of busing, because I'm a very old guy at 23. But this time, this friend of mine, he lived somewhat close to this high school called Roosevelt High School in Seattle, but yet he went to school far, far away. I think they had to drive for 45 minutes to go to that high school. I think it was called Nathan Hale. But if he would have gone to the other one, he was, I think, in the same year. He was a little bit young, but he would have gone to school with Bruce Lee's future wife, because she went to Roosevelt High School. And a lot of people don't talk about it. You can watch the movie of Bruce Lee. They make it look like he spent his whole United States life in San Francisco, but in truth, it was mostly in all Seattle. He had a time where he was in. That's just how, not only the news lies, that Hollywood also tells a lot of lies and inaccuracies. So that's how that is. But anyway, here we're talking about Poland, not about Bruce Lee. Stop getting me off subject here. No, there's one person that that was making a comment or two online on what I was saying about Poland. Poland seems to be something that a lot of people are interested in, so that's one reason why I'm talking about it. But he is actually, or obviously, pro-government Poland, and some of the people that commented in response either to what I said or what he said, they are like anti-Polish government, or at least executive government. You know, I wouldn't say that they're anti-Polish government, because even if you look at Ukraine, there's a lot of people that are not really in favor of what the government is doing there. But most of them have been in some way eliminated or sent out or imprisoned or who knows what. Just like media, any media that is not for what's going on and the crazy stuff in Ukraine, they seem to get canceled in some way. So. And maybe that's the same case in Poland, because a lot of people say it's much worse in Poland than it is even in Ukraine. You know, and there's evidence that could be true. But this person that is pro-Polish executive branch government was saying that there has not been a draft in Poland since 2008. So that's a point in his favor, meaning that it doesn't indicate like a warlike attitude, and that instead that the government was building roads and things like that. But building roads, that can be either seen as positive or negative, because Hitler also built roads, but he was building the roads to transport troops, you know, in the coming war. And I believe he wanted the war not to start when it did, I think in 1939. Instead, he wanted the war to start like in 1945. So he hadn't yet finished preparations for a war. So, but I'm not saying, you know, I don't like to compare leadership of anybody with Adolf Hitler. Sometimes you can, you know, not even Zelensky necessarily. So even though he's at least pro-Nazi, he might be a Nazi himself. You know, it's sort of like what they said about George Bush, you know, when they talk about all these neoconservatives, that you know, nobody called him a neoconservative, George Bush. But you know, they had that expression, if it looks like a duck, and acts like a duck, and walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, well, it must be a duck. So I guess George Bush, for that definition, is or was a neoconservative president. And talking about neoconservatives, you talk about like Jake Sullivan, who just went over to Ukraine and had some talk with Zelensky, and it's not really clear of what they were talking about. And there's some speculation. I watched the Duran, and you know, I don't really want to go into it because it's maybe a little bit confusing, or you know, because they're not quite sure either. It's just speculation of what was Jake Sullivan, you know, talking to Zelensky about. And some people are believing that maybe it was Ukraine's responsibility to take Kherson, and they're not doing so, or they haven't been successful, so they're not going to get so much funding, or not so, you know, not as many weapons. You know, I don't know. I don't believe in that one, because I have a little bit of different scenario, and I've mentioned that in other videos, because I've just seen way too much evidence over many years, and I've mentioned that in truth the United States was, you know, originally they, if you see the British you know, in the Crimean War in 1850s, they just wanted to demilitarize Russia at that time. And, you know, that was a crazy time anyway, you know, the 19th century as far as wars. It was, I mean, hey, you know, go back hundreds of years. You know, there's always been wars and rumors of wars, but anyway, it was a demilitarization. And then the time when I was in the military, because I learned very well, and I'm sure that Douglas MacArthur and Scott Ritter must have known, but I don't know why they don't talk about it, is that the United States, a major goal was to deprive Russia of the Crimea. You know, and a lot of it was because what we were told is Russia would cease to be an empire, and it was like because they wouldn't have a guaranteed port that was not frozen all year long. And you know, then you would think it would be a imperative for the United States to be very best buddies with Turkey, because then they couldn't get into the Black Sea, you know, to access that port. But You know, they tried to overthrow the government of Turkey some years ago. So I don't know. Erdogan is I guess unpredictable. He's very much pro-Turkey, so it's hard to predict, I guess, what he wants to do. So maybe that's why they wanted to overthrow him. So, but you know, on that issue, what I'm trying to say is that the United States, I believe now, they want the Crimea. They want their own military base there. And I personally believe that the major goal of all of these hostilities, and why the United States was making all these provocations for all these years, even before 2014, is to get the Crimea. Because they're still obsessed, you know, in their Cold War attitude of we got to get Russia. And of course it's we got to get Putin, as I made a video like that. But of course it's just to neutralize Russia. They're yearning for the years of like when it was with Yeltsin, where the U.S. was in buying up all the assets, buying all the farmland, you know, and having mostly control of Russia and keeping it down. The United States, of course, they have this policy. I can't remember if there's a name for that doctrine. All of these things I forgot, because I knew a lot of these things in the old days. You know, studying this stuff as well as, you know, working in the military, and I met a lot of these people that we're all talking about. These people that signed the Project for a New American Century. I sort of met Ronald Reagan. I sat next to him eating dinner. He was just telling jokes most of the time, so that was pretty cool. And but obviously I don't have anything to contribute to any I was just a corporal at the time, so it wasn't anything big. I like Jack Kemp. I met Jack Kemp too, and there was other people, and I didn't even keep a record of all these people. If I did, I would have had a lot more people to be, you know, mentioning and dropping names and have bragging rights. And of course, Colin Powell was, you know, I met him a few times. He had a regular person driving for him. His name was Otis, and I believe now he might even still might be working for well, how do I say that? Colin Powell died of COVID after getting vaccinated. That shows how good those vaccines were. Anyway, Otis, I think, was working for General Colin Powell. You know, even long after he left the military, he was in charge of, I think it was 5th Corps. It was Armor Division. He was stationed in the Abrams building, in the Abrams complex in Frankfurt, is where he was commanding. And he was only a 3-star general, a lieutenant general at that time, but had a lot of influence. It was tremendous influence, even for a lieutenant general, which was, you know, my boss was a 4-star general, and I've seen 4-star generals that didn't have the influence, anywhere near the influence that Colin Powell did at that time. And then there was one person, and I think I've mentioned him in another video, of course, that I also liked. He was a 1-star general. He was in charge of all the nuclear weapons and the Pershing missiles and all that in Germany, and you know, decent guy. Even a lot of these people in charge of these security things, like not the CIA or the FBI, but they were military and civilian, you know, very nice people. As much as, you know, you may not agree with, you know, the policy of their departments that they work for. But again, I'm off on a tangent. So let's talk a little bit more about Poland. You know, there's a lot of people that contribute on in comments, and, you know, trying to find out what really is going on in Poland. The only how do I say, positive news is what I got from that one pro-government person that contributed on my site. But the other people are telling things that I've been hearing an awful lot, and actually through people that I've known, you know, or there was one person also that Jai from India. I mentioned him in another video too, that there was a lot of Indian doctors that were leaving Ukraine when the hostilities came out, and they were badly harassed by the Polish border guards, which is of course controlled by the executive branch of the Polish government. Again, like, I'm trying to differentiate between the rest of the government or the Polish people and the executive branch of the government. So you don't want to demonize Poland, and I don't even want to demonize the Ukrainian people. You know, when you get some cabal of crazy people that are in charge of the country right now, and even the actions of what the citizens, are showing. It doesn't mean that they have that type of attitude. It's probably because they're forced into it. But anyway, I've talked to people that went across the border, and like I said, and this is even before the conflict. Say somebody, and I've heard about it twice, that you stay, say, at the train station because you don't want to get a hotel for 4 hours, because your train came in late and your next train leaves at early in the morning, and you have police coming around and they're kicking you and harassing you, and like you're some kind of a bum and you're just waiting for a friggin' train. You got a luggage sitting right next to you. It's not like, I don't know. It really makes you wonder, why they treat people so poorly there. They hate refugees mostly, I've noticed in Poland. So that is terrible. And we have over here on the news, I saw in Belarus, there was a couple border guards, Polish border guards that defected, and they were talking about mass killings of refugees that did go across the border. And then he even said that he can show where the bodies are all buried, on the Polish side. And then they had once, I don't even watch the news because I can't understand Russian. Especially the news is always going to be a lot more difficult to understand than even just somebody on the streets. So, but I just, in passing, I was seeing once the news, and they were showing bodies of people that the Polish border guards had killed. Refugees trying to flee into Western Europe. And as you remember, the West was saying that Lukashenko was sending airplanes to Syria and loading refugees onto it and sending them here, and then to push them across the border into Europe. I mean, think about that. Yeah, how plausible does that sound? What is he doing at gunpoint, going into Syria or some places and forcing people onto airplanes and then forcing them to the border? I mean, come on. That just gets far beyond ridiculous. All this fake information that comes from the West, it should make you sick, so you don't really know what to believe. There are people here, of course, that don't like Lukashenko, and I think a lot of this stems from how this problem with this election came down in 2020. The opponent, the opposition, was a housewife, had never been in any government office, never done anything whatsoever. Her sole experience was housewife. And Lukashenko won the election, apparently, at least how the government says here, with 80%. And people were made to believe that was cheating, and he didn't win by 80% or so. So there were protests, and the USA, if you see how this works, if like Voice of America, and now with even with the TikTok and all this, they can gradually get huge crowds of people to protest. And often, they'll ship you around free of charge. You get a free bus ride from all these other cities in Belarus, and you get a free bus ride. They send out advertisement all over to go to Minsk, and then they bring you to these rallies, where these rallies are at. And it's kind of fascinating seeing all these people. So then you're sitting there watching these rallies, even though maybe you don't even agree with that. That's how it's been done oftentimes. Because you might know, I worked in an intelligence battalion, and it's not that I was any kind of operative like that, but I know about all these things because sometimes you get trained, and or go through some sort of a training, and and you see how these things operate and how to make it look like things are not exactly how they really are. So, and deception, as you know, politics and so much is based on perception rather than truth. So everybody that watches this video probably already knows that, and that's probably why you're watching it. So I don't really need to say that, but anyhow, yes. But anyway, this how it is all working here, like say in Belarus to Poland, and the Polish government has some kind of a seething hatred of Belarus, and I keep mentioning, but it's not mentioned by anybody else really. anybody other vloggers. And Annie Kay, I'm sure she might have heard about this, but she should also mention it, because I have a lot of respect for her and her channel. But Poland, you know, they also have a big claim on the western part of Belarus. Like I said, I've mentioned that they want the states of Grodno and Brest, and to reincorporate that into Poland. They're very imperialistic, and but everybody's talking about that they want West Ukraine, probably Galicia. You know, and Galicia's borders have changed over time too, but I don't know which borders they're going to consider are Polish. You know, and everybody thinks that when Ukraine is that weak, and that everybody's going to swoop in and start taking the parts of Ukraine that were, you know, not part of Ukraine, that were originally part of their countries. You know, because Stalin, of course, passed out a lot of it, and from their countries, and made it part of Ukraine. I mean, it happened even with the Lenin. You know, Ukraine, they unfortunately, you know, the government, or at least how people are incited in Ukraine, is to think that they're the poor abused stepchildren or something like that, when in truth, during the Soviet Union, they were the spoiled brat children of the Soviet Union. First, when Lenin, you know, took over with the Bolsheviks, he gave the Donbass and huge areas to Ukraine. I believe part of that was because the western part was mostly agricultural, and he gave like the mining and the more and very productive part of the region that was bordering Ukraine, and it was a very important part of Russia. He gave that to the Ukraine to make Ukraine, you know, give it more potential. You know, and I believe that might have even included Kharkiv. And then you have Stalin, and he gave this Moldovan area and other areas to Ukraine, and stole it from Romania, for example. And you know, Romania didn't have the power, I guess, to resist. You know, and then they gave part of Hungary to Ukraine. So anyway, most of Ukraine is just put together from parts of other countries, and it really, historically, there really wasn't much of a Ukraine. And like if you say that part of Poland, you know, that there was a country, apparently, or state at least, called Galicia, and there were other parts. All these names, I don't even know them all, but they pieced it all together. And I think, like I heard, that for a short period of time there was a state, at least, or a region called the Ukraine in, I think, 1918. And then, of course, it didn't exist again, because, you know, they had the certain regions. Even Belarus, I believe, was a region. It was actually an autonomous region, of course, part of the Soviet Union. And I don't know if that is actually true about Ukraine, but they didn't become a country, actually, until 1991. And the Crimea was always a part of Russia. Even during the time when it was part of Ukraine, it was actually part of Russia. You know, and the people didn't want anything to do with Ukraine, even all those years. Those very short few years, anyways, is what I should say. To be honest with you, those people in the Donbass, they never wanted any part of Ukraine either. So they're reluctantly attached to that. And even Vladimir Putin, probably in the Minsk Accords, trying to keep the Donbass as part of Ukraine, to just give them autonomy. It's sort of like what China is even proposing for Taiwan, is to be, you know, have one country, but they would be an autonomous region. And most people in Taiwan, you know, find that acceptable, and in China as well. But the United States, of course, is not is trying to keep it, you know, incited until they get a war or something going, or, you know, because they don't want China to become more powerful by having these computer chip industry, which is the biggest contribution that Taiwan has to China or to the world. And yeah, that's just terrible. Terrible how you have some third party, they come in and stir up trouble, and it's like kids in a school ground, somebody getting two kids to fight that have no reason to fight against each other. You know how that is. So, but yeah, mostly this trouble in Poland and trying to figure out what is Poland going to do. That's very interesting. And the refugees, the refugee problems, I tell you, they're not going to be going into Belarus. Very, very few. They can't go really into Russia because they have to go through a war zone, which is the Donbass area. So the only place left to go might be Poland, and Poland hates refugees. So, and if we're talking about many millions, we're not just talking about 1 million, we're talking maybe, you might get as many as 6 million, possibly, when it starts to get cold. And who knows what happened to all these, this oil and gas that Ukraine had saved up. It wasn't even bombed. I highly suspect they shipped that off to Germany or someplace for some sort of a payment for maybe weapons. I have no idea. But they supposedly had enough for the winter, and now they don't have that much. And economy is going bad, and the heating stations are probably not in order. Electricity is out in like 40% of Ukraine. So they're going to be facing a world of hurt when it starts to get really cold here. And that alone is probably going to cause refugees. Maybe more so than the war itself. You know, if I were in Ukraine, I'll tell you what I would be doing. I would be trying to find some kind of a transportation, a moving company or somebody with a truck, and loading up my stuff and moving to some safer place. That's what I would be doing. Otherwise, you know, if you're going to flee with just your body and a backpack, you're probably, if your house is there when you return, it's probably going to be looted by some Nazis or something like that. So anyway, finding out what's going to happen, and you know, where are they going to run? To Germany? Germany themselves? They might even have refugees trying to find some place to warm up, depending on how cold that winter's going to be. You know, just shows you how brilliant these politicians are. Brilliant, you know, brilliant how Olaf Scholz, like I said, he put his money on the wrong horse, thinking that he's going to, you know, side with the United States rather than his real and true benefactors, which was Russia, which made the country rich as it is, and not going to be in the near future. And what has the United States really ever done for Germany? It's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You know, some people, I guess, don't learn that. But the cold weather's making my eyes water, so that's all I have for now. And I hope anybody who's getting this, I hope you're going to subscribe. Like I say, I'm still living out of a suitcase. I'll be doing better videos at some point in time. Might be a little while. Might be like 5 months now. I don't even know. Till I can move to Minsk. I probably can move to Minsk in maybe about 2 months, but it's more beneficial if I'm going to be able to stay in Russian classes here to, you know, to learn the language as best I can. So I wouldn't be going there, but at least until I can. It's a lot wiser if I stay in bad conditions for the benefit of learning Russian. So, okay, but that's it for now. And like I say, subscribe if you're new, if the algorithms brought you here. And I'll see you again the next time. Thanks.